Okay, welcome back. Michael Collins and ViralReporter.com in Santa Monica, in the LA area, and all over the world by extension, trying to stay on top of the situation here, which if we have a catastrophe as if appears to be unavoidable with spent fuel pool number 4, maybe even spent fuel pool number 3, one could go, then the other could follow, we will be in as much trouble as many parts of the island of Honshu and Japan. And maybe worse. We just don't know. All you've got to do is actually read the headlines. I've said this before. You don't even, if you're busy, you don't have time to read the stories, that's fine. If you just want to read the headlines, and most of the headlines on the site, I rewrite to try to make them tell a little story in and of themselves. So you'll understand what you're reading, or at least get the gist of the story. Now, let's bring Michael on here. I'm going to read a few headlines to you. Hello, Michael. Welcome back.
Hey there, Jeff. How are you?
I'm
considering
moderately radioactive, like most everyone else on the West Coast, I guess.
Oh,
or
boy,
minimally.
and it's going to get worse. How about those headlines? What do you have?
Well, the idea that Japan used to have radioactive thresholds above which were illegal and considered dangerous before the Fukushima catastrophe. Anything reading 100 becquerels per kilogram of cesium-137 or 134 was considered to be grade A nuclear waste. 100 becquerels per kilogram, grade A nuclear waste. After Fukushima, the government quickly readjusted their scale, and now 100 becquerels per kilogram of cesium is considered perfectly safe to eat. Now that's how crazy it's getting over there. They're also continuing to burn hundreds of millions of tons of radioactive debris from the quake and tsunami. Now, what they're doing here, literally, is exposing the entire country to radioactive pollution. So it will be, quote, equally contaminated. So no one will be rushing from one place to another. So everyone will be equally handicapped and equally sentenced to ill health, cancer, and potential death. This is, I think, honestly, it sounds bizarre, but I can think of no other reason why every major city in that country, on the island of Honshu at least, would offer to take in radioactive waste and burn it in the municipal incinerators. This is so crazy, and now some of the Japanese are beginning to talk about this. By the way, radioactive absorbing bacteria is common. There's one particular kind that loves plutonium, and it has been found everywhere on the paved surfaces in at least one major urban area. So, I mean, we're talking about that. They're also now talking about radioactive algae for the first time in print. That's coming. Another video is very interesting. An organic farmer, an older man and his son, they received their organic farm certification the day before the March 11th, 2011 tragedy at Fukushima. He says it's better to be dead than alive these days. He actually asked the government to come and kill him. It's just a tragic situation. Now, I don't know what's going to happen here. The last time we were on, you talked about the tuna, which were caught last August. No one's talking about the tuna they're catching now. Anything new on that?
Nothing new on the tuna. But there's something that I'd like to address in the last news item right there about that man saying it'd be better to be dead than alive. You know, this crisis, the extent of it, the never-ending horrors of it, is very easy to make people depressed. There is a way to deal with that depression, which is to get busy. And when I mean get busy is you have to take care of yourselves. Now, I'm not going to go off on all the things you have to do. Jeff and I have talked about that a lot. But the fact is, when you hear what the Japanese government is doing to their own people,
right,
and you think about, well, what about my government? It'd never do that. You know why? Because your government, Canadian, American, and a number of those European governments, and of course I'm saying this because this is a mostly English understanding, audience, they'll ignore it. And you can't ignore it. What Jeff just said, what you just said, Jeff, about burning all over Japan, I mean, think about the physical reality of what that does. When we had this meltdown begin, we had much more direct to the lower and the middle and upper atmosphere plumes of radiation going straight up. Now, we still have that. We got plenty. But the main amount of goo is literally goo. It's that, 1,000 tons a day of incredibly radioactive water pouring into the Pacific. But that's at that site.
1,000 tons a day, right?
That's right. That's
the admitted amount, Michael. That's the admitted amount. They're not talking. This was admitted no more than 10 weeks ago. What happened in the year before that? They don't even talk about.
Oh yeah, just like we're in this. Well, what's up with the tuna? I can tell you what's up with the tuna. 1 block away from me, there's a sushi restaurant, and they're serving it up. And that's if you're lucky. And if you put down the coin to get it, because it's going to cost you. But this is something people should know. In just the last week, we became aware of a U.S. government memo that talked about the actual dissipation of radioactive fallout in the ocean. Now, I'm not sure if I totally buy it, but it's a 1955 memo from the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission. And they talk about how it kind of stays together. It doesn't dissipate like, say, if you were to drop ink into a sink full of water. You watch that ink just pretty much fill up the whole thing evenly. That it doesn't really do that. What does that have to do with the Japanese burning radioactive waste from top to bottom in Japan? It means this. That radioactive waste is going to deposit itself all over the Pacific, at least the width of the breadth of the country. Mm-hmm. And so, Jeff, here you have the government of Japan with the acquiescence of the people. Because, folks, if you're Japanese and you're listening to us right now, you have to get busy. Because I'm telling you, nobody comes into my neighborhood and starts killing me and my neighbors without me doing something about it. And that's what we're all doing here, something about it. We're talking about it. The fact is that government is allowing a larger amount of the Pacific to get hammered. When you think about the amount of radiation that was found in that bluefin tuna from last August, what do you think it is now? When you think about, is it affecting me? Well, if you're in Canada, they just shut down the government's ability to test their oceans for contaminants. They said, we're out of money.
Right.
We're out of money. So what does that leave us? That leaves us.
Now, see, the Canadians are the only government on the entire North Pacific Rim, either side of the ocean, that did any real testing of fish, at least as far as we know, in the consuming vector over here. They tested a group of fish, 6 months ago, something like that. But they refused to tell where the fish were taken. They said they were taken in the ocean. They wouldn't say where they were taken. They did say that they did find traces of radioactivity, but the usual. Don't worry, too little, too low, nothing to be concerned about. So, but that's it. Now the Canadians are out of money and they can't do any testing. Give me a break.
The most dangerous environmental catastrophe besides global warming, which is more long-term and a different kind of thing, is happening right now. And the Canadians are throwing their hands in the air and saying, I give up.
Yeah,
now,
you and I both know they're testing all the time, but they're not telling us. So is our government.
But what about the people that test themselves? We got an article I keep talking about, a Canadian test that we're going to be coming out and talking about, but we've been sidetracked by other issues that you can see on EnviroReporter.com. The thing is that I've looked at tests that have been done at Canadian labs. Jeff, something's going on in those labs. It's one of these things where I need to detect if there's a marble in my house. And the lab comes back after they've taken your money and they send you the results and they say, well, our ability to detect something, it has to be the size of a refrigerator.
I know.
So, ski rude. Now, these same folks that did a bunch of Canadian testing, very, very serious results. They sent their samples to an American laboratory. They say, Michael, we can't really understand these results. Would you take a look at them? I take a look at them, and judging from the notes that the person who sent in the samples took in their conversation with the lab about how did you do this and why does it look this way and what are your detection limits. Basically, the lab came back and talked about voltage. They talked repeatedly about voltage and its ability to determine and figure out what kind of radioisotope you have in, say, this skim milk or this celery or this kale. Now, I've never heard, Jeff, or strontium-90, which is really what these folks are looking for, because strontium-90 is that big indicator, just like cesium-137 of Fukushima goo. That these folks, they get this, they're told by this lab, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars into them, that, well, what we had to do is this and that and the other thing. It all had to do with voltage. In my knowledge of radiation, and I know a lot about it, I'm not a doctor, but I know a lot about it, I never heard of any kind of radio analysis done where the determining methodology was voltage. It's not voltage. It's something else, basically. It's a thing where you get a sample. I want to test for strontium-90. I want to get rid of the
who's behind this? Who's behind this hocus pocus?
It's nationwide in both countries. The labs are for squat. I mean, it's amazing. The United States government, they farm out work like work they have farmed out in $41 million worth of testing and sampling and up at the Santa Susana Field Laboratory, Rocketdyne, where the worst meltdown in America took place 35 miles northwest of downtown Los Angeles. They farm out the work, Jeff, to labs. They say, whoops, don't tell anybody, but our lab's really bad. The National Lab of America, really bad. So you farm it out to these other guys. And these other guys say, I know what you're trying to do. You want to know the backgrounds of all these radioisotopes so you can keep to the agreement that the polluters made up there with the people of the state of California. We're going to clean it up back to normal. We're going to clean it back to background. Except there's a fella in a lab who says, we can't do that for this amount. We've got a bunch of other work to do. That kind of detecting takes a lot of work to get down to the levels where people aren't going to be harmed. We can't do it. So what does the U.S. EPA do? And you could read this on our site, Runkle Roulette, and other pieces that we have recently about that place. What do? They just don't tell the people, and they just try to run it by them. It's as if Jeff went out and bought a nice new car, and I end up driving up in a 71 Pinto and say, here it is, yeah, here's your car.
No, thank you. Not with that gas tank. No.
Bait and switch. And this in a country that is facing a current of goo that is about halfway here, and that's being nice, that's being optimistic, that's being conservative. It's coming, and it's going to come down the coast.
Did you see that other story? That there's a very interesting story, and I'm not sure if it has a bio component to it or not. But much of the radioactivity, now we do know that bacteria and algae can absorb and do absorb radiation. Apparently in the ocean, and I've forgotten the title of the story, it was something like dilution is not the solution. It turns out that this tainted water does not dilute in the bulk, the big canvas of the ocean. It stays in plumes and what they call columns, and it pretty well sticks together in many cases. So it moves through the ocean as a mass of radioactive water. It doesn't dilute like you'd put it in a bowl and stir it up, which was really unfortunate to read about. But, again, we don't know what we're dealing with here. This is all new territory.
All new territory. How'd you like to be a boater out in the Pacific and hear that? How'd you like to be a surfer in Hawaii and hear that?
No.
Well, at least people are hearing something. In the last week we've seen The Atlantic magazine came out with that story that you referred to, which is, hey, if everybody in Japan burns pretty much an equal amount of this stuff, we'll all be contaminated, meaning we're all not contaminated.
Well, there was a story early on about that, and it had to do with some communities in and around, it would be northwestern Honshu, saying that they were the cleanest and people should move there and bring business there, and the government went right after that. And that, I think, was the genesis of why all the major municipalities said, sure, bring us our share. We'll do our bit for the mother country. And they all basically committed suicide.
And to what end? I mean, you got to wonder,
to what end?
What
exactly.
radioactive debris are you talking about? Are you guys driving into the hot zone and tearing stuff down and pulling it out of the hot zone and burning it? That's the definition of stupidity on an incredible scale.
Correct.
People who look at history, they'll let's look at Rome, one of the greatest empires ever. Early on in their history, they had a big battle where they left the gates open. People are like, how could they have done that? It took them almost 400 years till Julius Caesar came back and restored their greatness. Because it happens, folks. The gates are open. And this is what's going on. And now we have these little breakthroughs in media, which is good. At least people know about it. Thank goodness for you, Jeff, and this show. And with Yoichi, we're all the better for it. I will say we're going to have a big piece of mine coming out in the next couple of days, which, of course, I'll send to you, and folks will find out from Rense.com, that does address Fukushima, and it's a print piece, and it's going to be a real barn burner. So that's something to look forward to coming from us. I want to just tell some folks that our radiation station's been down now for about 12 hours, and that's because we're undergoing maintenance and upgrading, so don't worry about that. I will say, though, we got a news today out of Potterblog in St. Louis, all on tape. It's very, very concerning, Jeff. There was a supercell type storm over the St. Louis area.
I heard that. Yeah. And he's at it again, testing. What did he find? Did he put it up?
Of course, the ring came in at 28 times background, but that's not like the 200 he's had before. What was amazing was the ambient air. The ambient air was coming in between 4 and 5 times background, and it happened on the spot while he was testing the rain. It's like, wait a minute, let's get this thing, let's see what normal is, then we'll put it over our sample and we'll test it. Well, normal wasn't there, and it was about 4.5, 5 times background. And as you folks, a lot of you know, California Highway Patrol, anything 3 times background and above, you got a hazardous materials situation, and all the attendant protocols kick in. This is over St. Louis, and gosh knows how, where else. Well, actually, we do know.
Right.
Somebody wrote into our friend there and said, I'm north of San Francisco, and it's coming in at 3 times background. So this is not abnormal for if we could look into the future. This is going to become more normal. We got super big blasts when these meltdowns began, but, we haven't even talked about the greatest threat to humanity, and we talk about it all the time, is Unit 4's spent fuel pond. And in a piece that we'll have also in the next couple of days, it will tell people what they can do to at least voice their anger or their hope that there will be some kind of government reaction to it. We've had now we have our Senator Wyden, and now I believe Markey, Congressman Markey, are pushing in Congress to do something about Unit 4. You know what gets me, Jeff? We have a military that we could invade any beach for no good reason at all, but we can do it and set up shop mighty quick. This thing's on a beach. Why don't we calibrate, our abilities and make them go do it? But it's just beyond. You and I have talked about that unit and its ability to fall over, the probability that it will fall over if the degradation of the steel and the structure and the concrete continue with this incredible amount of radiation, and also because it's structurally destroyed. We talked about 2-3 months ago, build a sandbag structure around it. Just start sandbagging. Got no shortage of nice hot sand right there. Bag it up, surround the thing, and keep bagging so you have a platform. And then you can get cranes up there and you can start lifting stuff out. And you see Nothing.
Well, they're going to allegedly pull out a few of the spent fuel rods in July as a publicity stunt. If they can find some that aren't broken off in there. A lot of them broke off, and there's apparently a pretty good-sized pile of debris at the bottom. Do you remember that one story that came and went that disclosed the fact that there was a sizable leak in the bottom of the pool, and the water is flowing out very quickly from that leak? They're catching it in containment, and then with high-speed pumps running it right back up and into the top again. So round and round it goes. Only one story on that, and it was gone.
That's right. Now, they talk about we've gotten underneath it and shorted up. I'm like, you have? Really? Why don't you really show us what you did besides these kind of hard to tell where you really are photos of guys in outfits that aren't nearly protective enough, but what can you say? Going around, you can get under there, but you can't plug that leak. You know how big that hole is?
It's ridiculous. They have the reinforcement was described by one engineer as being far less than the minimal integrity that existed before the quake. So they haven't achieved anything. And they go home on the weekends, like you said.
They go home on the weekends.
They recently took 10 days off.
Well, actually, considering they can't really do anything, but they won't cop to it.
Right.
First of all, I don't buy they can't do anything. The sandbagging idea is an idea
yes,
come on. If they can move cranes into place, they can start trying to just build something up. So if you have another 9 earthquakes, it's got nowhere to go.
Of course.
I mean, I don't have a degree in structural engineering to be able to say that's a start.
Do we we don't see the brightest and best doing anything?
No.
Not even talking where the media will notice, and maybe they're talking in private, but there have got to be engineers out there and physicists who are just tearing their hair out looking at this thing with ideas, and they probably submit their ideas. They get nothing back except a nice form letter from TEPCO.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, I did get a note today from a couple that has made it to the Oregon coast from the Midwest, and they have a big ray gun on top of a white bus, kind of like the bus further in the Ken Kesey novel, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And they have a ray gun, and I haven't watched their whole tape yet, but they claim they zap that ocean, take care of it. At least that's trying to do something.
Yeah. All right. Michael, thank you. We're out of time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, folks. Make sure to protect yourselves.
Yeah. Be well. Say hi to Denise. Right.
You bet. Thanks.
You. Good night. Bye. Michael Collins, EnviroReporter.com, and we'll be back. Okay, let's get right back to it. And up with us this half hour, as he is most every Monday night, Yiochi Shimatsu, one of the world's truly great environmental reporters. He is a great source of wisdom for any issue that involves our world and its fading properties. And most especially, he has been way ahead of the curve on the Fukushima catastrophe. And he's back tonight to talk about some other things that are barely making the news. Hello, Yiochi. Welcome back.
Yeah, hello, Jeff. Good to be back with you. I wanted to clarify a few things while, we have this sort of interlude with Reactor 4, which, we're just sort of sitting around twiddling our thumbs like the TEPCO crew waiting for this thing to go down in the next big earthquake. But in the meanwhile, I think there's a lot of other issues surfacing. And some really nefarious stuff going on in the health front. This World Health Organization whitewash of radiation, saying that there's no radiation threat associated with Fukushima. Well, this has sparked a controversy. A key researcher, an elderly professor at Hiroshima University, has responded since then with a study that he's been doing very quietly on the children of the survivors of the atomic bomb in Hiroshima. Okay?
Right.
He said he had to rush out his findings. He said he needed more time. But these people are in their late 40s, most of them, okay? And he's been very quietly doing this because there's been an official cover-up for 60 years on what happened with these people. He found out that the children of the atomic bomb victims have a much higher frequency of leukemia, okay? So this research picks up from research done something like 60 years ago, right after Fukushima. Same university, a doctor there, Yamawaki was his name, who did research findings after Hiroshima, finding that leukemia was very prevalent among atomic bomb victims. Like this is two or 3 years after the dropping of the bomb. What happened is that in 1950, the U.S. and Japanese governments created a joint radiation effects research foundation, which then did the official studies, and the whole leukemia issue was basically quietly put away in a drawer somewhere, okay? So people in Hiroshima are speaking out right after the issuance of this World Health Organization report. Now, the other big thing that happened right after this report was issued a couple of weeks ago on June 23rd, there was the re-election of the director of the WHO, okay, unanimous vote. So in other words, the report that was issued, the whitewash, was very much linked with the re-election of the WHO director, who is a public health person from Hong Kong, who is in charge of the cover-ups of avian influenza and the SARS. SARS outbreak. So let's discuss this a little bit, because I think we need to understand that they didn't issue this report minimizing, in fact, denying the radiation effect out of ignorance. There's a game plan on the ground, and we've got to go over what that means. And this takes on kind of a very sinister, there's something very sinister about it, considering the fact that there was a major cover-up of the radiation effect at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This is the second major cover-up now being planned and perpetrated by the World Health Organization. So we've got to look at all the little pieces and details of what they plan to do and how it can be countered. Okay? Okay, so who is Margaret Chan? Okay, I've been to her press conferences back during these outbreaks. I'm very familiar with her work, okay? She's what we call a Beckham, not David Beckham, but a British-educated Chinese agent of Her Majesty, the Queen.
Wow.
Who right now is celebrating her Blood Diamond Jubilee.
Isn't that nice? Yeah.
Margaret Chan, besides being educated in public health in Britain, which basically means vaccination campaign, is received the order of she's an OBE. She's received the Order of the British Empire. She is a loyal subject of that British Empire in its attempt to influence the Chinese people, okay? And that's why after her botched job and cover-up of these pandemics that broke out in Hong Kong, she was made into the WHO director. They take the most incompetent people in the world who are willing to tell lies, bold-faced lies.
Sure. She's a hack. She's a hack. She's a hack or a whore or both.
A total puppet, a sock puppet of the microbiological, let's say the pharmaceutical companies who are running the vaccine campaign, which are nearly completely worthless. In fact, quite worse than worthless.
On balance, they're absolutely harmful, yeah.
Yeah, on the very first avian influenza outbreak in 1997, this was way before the ones in Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam. There was avian influenza, and she's very notorious for going on television saying, "I ate chicken last night." Okay?
Yes.
Because she did not issue an order to prevent live chickens from being shipped into Hong Kong.
Right.
And the reason for protecting the chicken industry is because chickens are fed vast amounts of antibiotics in order so that they gain weight faster. It's not to fight bacteria so much, but they put on weight much faster with antibiotics.
That's right.
Okay? So it's a huge amount of money for the pharmaceutical industry, all right?
Well,
Then in
70%, Yochi, 70% of the
Yep.
antibiotics manufactured in the U.S. are fed to livestock.
That's right. It helps promote growth, makes them grow faster. This whole gigantism, concept is based when animals feel fairly safe in their environment, their immune systems don't have to work so hard, and therefore they just put on weight faster. But on the other hand, when there's an epidemic, they're the first. The large animals are the first to go, the oversized ones, and they're very, very, prone.
Well,
to
they actually feed these antibiotics to animals for virtually their entire lives. They don't feed it to them when they get sick.
Every day. It's in their diet
Yeah.
every day,
Yeah.
and it promotes fast growth. They put on a few more pounds, and so the whole meat industry
Well, yeah.
makes a little bit more money. A few dollars more per
10,000 head of cattle, an extra 5 pounds of cow at $1 on the hoof or whatever, and you got money.
That's right. Well, it ends up being billions of dollars of the net sum. Okay, so and those antibiotics are directly going into the human body, which is sort of causing whole chain reactions of why children, have never developed the kind of immune systems they should have. They suffer the same as these animals. As soon as any viral outbreak or bacterial outbreak happens, they're very vulnerable because they've been fed antibiotics. Their natural defenses have been made unoperational, inoperative. Okay, in 2003, there was the SARS outbreak, in March, and this completely split the medical community in the Chinese world, There was a total rupture, a division in two types of philosophy. On one side was the British-educated people who completely supported that the only defense against SARS was a vaccine, and they dumped millions of dollars into vaccine work to private companies, university labs, and so on. And Margaret Chan was on the wrong side of that. She supported the vaccine group. On the other side, as this pandemic continued on, many researchers, herbal practitioners, and doctors who do, regular medical doctors who do research in herbals, were bringing people back from the doorstep of death with herbal therapies, which were reducing the fevers that the patients have and building their immune systems, and people were coming back. It was a tremendous success story for herbal medicine, and doctors in Hong Kong picked up on that. They're also Chinese. They picked up on that and wanted to introduce this in Hong Kong. But it has been the British policy, since World War II, to not recognize Chinese herbal medicine inside Hong Kong. Never. The last time Chinese medicine was used in hospitals in Hong Kong was during the Japanese occupation during World War II. All right? The whole time, the British medical system thought that it was just, hocus pocus, witchcraft, and the real solution are nothing but vaccines. So anyway, enough doctors got together finally and went against Margaret Chan and her vaccination, and proved successful. In fact, in the 9 years since the SARS outbreak, there's been no successful vaccine, and SARS has been eliminated through herbal therapy. It hasn't come back, all right? So it was a huge victory. But for her loyalty to the cause of the big pharmaceutical companies, this total failure, this woman who's a total failure in public health, was appointed to be the head of the World Health Organization. I mean, what a travesty of medicine and science this is for have her run. And she was just recently reelected thanks to this recent report on the lack of radioactive dangers in Fukushima. Right. Now, Margaret Chan's main achievement under her term, her main singular accomplishment was to create something called the IVI in Seoul, South Korea in 2009. And IVI stands for, this is sponsored by the WHO, the UNDP, and some other, many pharmaceutical companies also. It's called the International Vaccine Institute, The International Vaccine Institute in Seoul, South Korea, right next to Japan. And their main project has been an anti-malarial vaccine. Again, they're trying to develop vaccines after this herb called artemisinin. Artemis was the goddess Diana, the goddess of the wood, and also the goddess who healed the illnesses in women. Okay, it's the most effective herb ever against malaria. It basically wipes out malaria. Okay, but the vaccinators just never give up. They keep coming back. Are you on me? Are you still keeping up with me?
Oh yeah, right there. Go ahead. Oh,
Okay,
I just
okay.
let me drop something in, Yochi. You were
Yeah,
talking about antibiotics, and we mentioned animals here. And I don't believe
Yeah.
in eating animals. I'm a vegan, and I just wanted people to know that every year in this country, 35 million cattle are slaughtered, 112 million pigs are slaughtered. And think of the antibiotics and the other additives that are fed to these animals, how much water and how much grain they use. We've got to get off this meat diet crap. It's unbelievable. 4,000 cows an hour are slaughtered.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
Well, meat, if it was properly grown in a nice, clean environment, is not bad. Unfortunately, they're fed in feedlots.
That doesn't happen. Not over
they
here.
would all be dead. I mean,
Yeah,
they're
very hard
on,
to find.
3 meters of manure. Yeah,
that's right.
These places, you drive by them, you can smell them from
miles and
20
miles away.
I mean,
yeah, very unhealthy
stuff. This is unhealthy. It's inhuman, and it's terrible for the environment. And well, anyway, okay. With this, let's get back to the
23 million chickens are killed every day.
Yeah.
It's
and
crazy.
these things are just, I mean, I get a gut ache from eating these fried chickens at fast food places.
Yeah.
In Southeast Asia, at least they have range chickens. I can eat those, okay? But no, it is terrible. The antibiotics have a terrible effect on you, and they're fed hormones. They're fed all sorts of things that you don't even want to think of. Dairy cows, you don't even. It's really, it's really unmentionable what they.
And over 50% of all dairy cattle have active cases of bovine leukemia. Think about that.
Yeah. There's parts to them, and even worse, to get milk to correspond to human milk, they actually give them human hormones. Okay.
Yep.
From placental tissue. So that'll put you off milk forever. At least milk in a carton. I mean, they take the best food in the world and they turn it into a toxic poison. I mean, this is really, really terrible. What's going on? Pharmaceuticals working with agribusiness, and all of them hooked up with the nuclear energy for power. So very corporatized world.
That's right.
And in the WHO, one of the main corporate partners is GlaxoSmithKline, GSK. Okay, the British-based multinational pharmaceutical, one of the biggest in the world. Okay, now if we look at GlaxoSmithKline's activities in vaccine work, it's a roadmap to where they are going in Fukushima, how they plan to deal with the epidemic of leukemia there, okay? Last year, the same year, right after the Fukushima disaster and the month afterwards, GSK rushed out an anti-leukemia vaccine, okay? Leukemia cells, these are white cells that don't ever mature, and they sort of rapidly grow. They're kind of immortal until they just paralyze your whole blood system. They come out of the bone marrow, and your backbone, and in your bones, basically. And so it's a cancer of the blood, essentially, simply put. And it synergizes with a certain kind of virus, which acts as a messenger for the replication process, okay? So they come up with a vaccine for leukemia. Just rush this out. So in other words, while the World Health Organization is saying there is no danger of radiation effects from Fukushima, at the same time, one of the main corporate sponsors of their International Vaccine Institute is rushing out an anti-leukemia vaccine. So you get the picture here. This vaccine is very expensive. It's going to be very expensive because it's a boutique vaccine.
Right.
Which, when you have
a designer vaccine.
People,
yes.
For the very, very rich and powerful, to reassure the Japanese business and corporate and government elite that they can be safe. Their children will be safe. What do they plan to do with all the... and the other thing is they'll do tests, I'm sure, in Fukushima with some of the school children who are affected, because the drug companies don't look at these as victims of a radiation disaster who need the help of the medical community. They look at them as a research, what's called a cohort, a group that they can conduct research on, okay? It's like a group of prisoners, a confined group that they can run their research on for further research, okay? And they'll keep these people in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
Now, GSK signed an agreement with, subsequently with a company called Chiome, a Japanese company, which is a spin-off of what's called RIKEN, R-I-K-E-N, which is the Institute of Physical and Chemical Science in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
It's a private foundation, 100% supported by the Japanese government. And the reason this thing exists that way is so that there's no public transparency and it doesn't have to report to Parliament for the kind of research that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And this RIKEN Institute does not only research into, microbiology, okay, into antibodies, that, basis of vaccine work, it also is a major supporter of nuclear energy research, nuclear physics. And this is the same institute that was contracted by the Japanese military before and during World War II to build the Japanese atomic bomb. All right? So the bomb and the medicine against radiation developed in the same company, and its spinoff is now working with Glaxo, which is tied in with the World Health Organization.
Yes.
It's all, so we see the collusion between the World Health Organization and the IAEA, the Atomic Energy Agency, replicated in the private corporate level with this cooperation alliance between GSK, Glaxo, and Chiome, which is an arm of RIKEN. Okay, so this is a total sort of top-down bureaucratic structure being imposed on the people. What Glaxo and Chiome also do work on are things like, okay, let's look at how leukemia, most people who have leukemia do not just die from the cancer itself. And at the end game of leukemia, most people will die from flu, and in a way they'll die of just diarrhea. They just cannot control their bowel movements if they die of diarrhea.
Yeah, dehydrated.
So GSK's other areas of research are also in, guess what, flu, okay, and influenza, and also...
And a vaccine for diarrhea.
Yeah,
right?
And Shigella, one of the really toxic, the most toxic form of diarrhea, which destroys your kidneys.
It's a single-celled organism that causes it, right?
Yeah. And these are the keys to attributing the radiation-caused deaths in Fukushima in the years and decades ahead to outbreaks of influenza and to outbreaks of amoeba or Shigella, okay? You understand what I'm saying here? They're setting up a roadmap here of how these people are going to die, and it will not be linked to nuclear power, okay, the nuclear meltdown. This is what is happening here. That's why I said this is extremely insidious stuff.
Oh, they're the worst. They're the worst.
Pardon?
Yeah. They're the worst.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Evil. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's evil. I mean, the word that came to my mind immediately is diabolical. I don't know of anything that could be more insidious than what they plan to do with these victims who need medical care, to use them as research subjects, and to find ways to attribute their death and possibly even promote their death. You know?
Oh, well, they're going to profit on it one way. They're going to profit on it. We can count on that one way or the other.
Oh, there's big money in this, yeah. I mean, there's big money, and it's going to help the nuclear industry. And we've seen, this is not theoretical, conspiracy theory. Back in Japan, late 1996, there was an O157 outbreak, and a lot of microbiologists in Japan determined that the E. coli amoeba had been, the DNA of that had been spliced, there had been Shigella spliced into that, and that's why it was so toxic for all the children who died from that outbreak. So immediately, many microbiologists saying this came out of a laboratory. A lot of that information has been suppressed.
Yeah.
We see SARS, racially targeted, mainly hitting men in their 50s, okay? A very targeted kind of pathogen.
Very fine-tuned, very fine. I told you when in an email we talked, there was a Canadian newspaper story that came out at the height of the SARS outbreak as it was impacting Canada. And when they hit their 100th victim, they put all 100 pictures of the victims in a block photo montage in a news story. And I think all but 3 or 4 were Asian males.
That's right. And the vector for that was a civet cat, a kind of wild animal that's eaten as a sort of aphrodisiac, introduced through Taiwan. So there's a definite route where, this could easily have been a biowarfare incident. And we've seen recently, right? Sure. avian influenza, a super flu was called the Armageddon flu, right? Developed in a UN-approved laboratory in Rotterdam at the Erasmus Center in Rotterdam, the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And that's a level 4 lab. Okay, it's called the level 4
BSL-4,
lab,
right?
Handles aerosol, the thing that spreads the airborne pathogens, highly lethal, highly contagious. Okay, that handles level 4. There's also a lot of the level 4 work is going on in level 3, what they call level 3 plus. Okay, not authorized to do so. A lot of this work going on. So we've got to be also wary when we look at a nuclear disaster or any kind of major disaster at what kind of pathogens the victims are being attacked by, under assault from, and trace these back to the level 4 lab. And there's dozens of them. And the United States has, I think, about half of them in the world. They're all over the place. People do not know their location, and they have to be looked up. We all know about Fort Detrick in Maryland, but there's many, many right near major civilian cities.
Oh, they often put them.
New Orleans that had been set up, and that's been erased off the map. It was flooded, and they just sort of erased it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. They put a lot of them in. They put a lot of them in universities too.
Yeah, there's universities. So they're all over the map, and we've got to be very watchful of how deaths from major radioactive leaks or meltdowns, how they are reported later as part of a pandemic of flu or an 0157 event and so on and so forth. How they dilute the responsibility, shuck it off from the nuclear industry and protect the nuclear industry.
Yep.
So right now we're seeing in Fukushima, it's been hit, last year by triple disaster. Now a fourth is on the way, and this one is far more sinister than the ones before because it's aimed at a cover-up. And I hate to put it this way, the World Health Organization basically issues the license for mass murder. That's what they're issuing.
Hey, I concur 100%. The facts are, you're right. Yiochi, thanks for being here again. As always, wonderful half hour of information and perspective. We appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Yiochi Shimatsu here with us most every Monday, and you can hear his update right there on the front page at Rense.com, along with Michael Collins as well. All right, that's our Monday. We'll be back tomorrow night. Hope to see you then.